Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. Today we have Erica Shoemate with us, and she'll be telling us about her journey into cybersecurity. Erica, introduce yourself to the audience and let us know a little bit about your background.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I'm super excited to be a part of this podcast and your audience in this conversation. Again, my name is Erica Shoemate, and I actually took a very non-traditional path into national security and cybersecurity and the AI world. I am a first generation college graduate from inner city Memphis, and which is a whole different like just upbringing in general that really informs the work that I do today. And I started my career serving in vulnerable communities at the local government
Mm.
level, and that grounded me really in my understanding that safety starts with people and not systems. And that lens really propelled me into my federal national security and intelligence background, where I work through real time threat environments and brief senior leaders up to the highest levels of the US government. And for your audience, the agencies that I've been a part of, I've worked at the FBI and also across the US intelligence community in various liaison, joint duty assignments as well, including serving time overseas, serving in high threat operations, and also having cross functional expertise in varying areas from thinking about technology transfer, export controls, also things around counterterrorism, also the cyber warfare as it also relates to terrorism and counterintelligence as well. And from there, I transitioned into big tech and trust and safety and served as a policy leader initially at the at the regional level, and then ultimately at the global level. And during some of the most consequential moments of of our time in modern day history online, where cybersecurity policy and emerging AI, all these risks have converged in like one big moment. And so today I really help organizations build real responsible AI and human-centered policy and safety frameworks. And so my journey just proves that you don't need this traditional cyber pedigree to be a part of this mission. You just need to love the mission, understand it, grow with it, critical thinking, and having the courage to lead in all of this complexity.
Let's kind of break that down for the audience because we've had lots of folks with non-traditional backgrounds from different intelligence fields and engineering fields that have come and broken into the industry. And like you said, it's about the passion, it's about taking those transferable skills and competencies from your past experiences and how they relate to your future role. You mentioned you started out in Memphis working with vulnerable communities. How did that inform your tech career, and how did tech change from when you started to now? And how did that reflect on the changes in your career over the time?
Oh my gosh, great question. When I think about, like you said, the work in vulnerable communities as someone who actually grew up as a part of those vulnerable communities, I actually really took some of the, I'll call it the life learnings that not only personally, but professionally, really understanding how much technology can have on a community and whether that is having good intention around innovation or not, there's still a lot of inadvertent harm and weaponization sometimes that comes with having technology being grown elsewhere. And so, what I've seen, honestly, not only from my time starting as a very young junior career person at the local government working with vulnerable communities, is also the literacy around digital literacy, now AI literacy as well. And then also seeing that there were very few people along my career path that actually looked like me who were making these final decisions. And so that's really one of the main missions and reasons, the things that keep me going and to continue to fight to be in rooms where people that look like me may not always be in, or if they are, if there's one, maybe two, and really understanding the importance of having not only diverse perspectives, but diverse lived experience and including those who might not look like you or where you've grown up. Because if we're going to say that these systems really need to be speaking for the people and for the communities that it's supposed to serve, then it's really important to get honest with how these models look as we are thinking about AI. Also, even from cybersecurity, specifically threats, when you have a homogenous way of looking at data, because it has not been diversified, that within itself is a huge risk and vulnerability because you don't even have your eye on the prize as it relates to other emerging trends, things that could be potential threats. And so that's really one of the unique frameworks, not unique to me, but like unique conversations and pieces that I continue to bring because I'm sure you've heard we want to eliminate bias, we want to mitigate bias and I just keep screaming, okay, if you really want to do these things, whether that is corporate, nonprofits, people around the world, then we have to get honest and say like I am going to do the work to bring those that are most least likely to be represented in these rooms. I'm gonna do the job, get on the ground, and I'm gonna meet people where they are. There's a lot of historical context to that as well, and, we can talk about that a bit more, but those are the things that I learned starting with being, one, a part of the vulnerable community and being able to work within that community once I became even more educated along the way.
Well, let's talk about the evolution of your career because I think that's an important aspect that many of the audience come to this podcast about is they're it might be in a different field, they might not have all the skills and competencies. Tell us where you were, like, career-wise, initial degree-wise, and how you evolved to where you are right now. Tell us the journey. I know you gave us a synopsis, but, that detailed journey of how you evolved.
Absolutely. So for your audience, kind of give you, like you said, my degrees, walk through, as I mentioned earlier, being a first generation college grad. I'll even go as far as to talk about the granular level of where I've come from. Early on, I always knew that I would do something impactful. I didn't know exactly what that would look like, but at a very early age, I can recall from since like first, second grade, I've always been a storyteller. I've always loved to read, and I was an avid writer, entering essay contests at a very early age. And that is really that fire that keeps me going. It's like when I have nothing else, writing is very therapeutic for me and now that I'm in this journey of motherhood as well, I actually listen more now that I'm actually able to to read, unfortunately. And being now like it's walking your audience through my journey, talked about being a small kid, understanding that I would likely be the first to go to college along the way. I always found myself buried in studying. Like I was always curious. So I would just say to your audience too, curiosity is the currency. And always being like, I want to learn more, like almost sitting at the feet of learning all the time. That's me. I'm always looking for more and I'm always being this outside the box thinker. And so I actually graduated from the University of Mississippi or Ole Miss, if you love SEC football. Uh, and I am not from Mississippi. Most people, when I say that, they immediately assume, again, from Memphis, but went to Oxford, Mississippi. Incredible experience, really eye-opening and life-changing in so many ways. I was very active on campus, being part of a very prestigious class called the Chancellor's Leadership Class, also being an ambassador, all these cool things that really kind of rounded out who I was. And also I served as a student clerk for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Mississippi. And that opportunity really opened my eyes to a world that was so much bigger than I could have even imagined, being able to meet special agents from different agencies, also meeting and working very closely with the U.S. attorney himself, working with assistant U.S. attorneys, and or we say AUSA, and also being able to go and talk and sit at the feet of the federal court judges, which was really cool to like be in their chambers and just soak up all of this knowledge. And I actually had the opportunity to intern as a paralegal because of my degree. I don't even know if I said it, but I have a Bachelor of Paralegal Studies from the University of Mississippi.
Mhm.
Your audience may want to know, yep, thought I was going to go to law school. And that didn't happen. One, full disclosure for anyone that may be having this same feeling, I am just not a great standardized test taker, and I did not do well on the LSAT, and that freaked me out because I was so used to, like, being great, and decided that I would pivot, and I am known to be the queen of pivots, and pivoted into public administration. I earned my master's of public administration at Arkansas State University, and there my dream, I had goals. My dream was to get to Washington, D.C. to have an internship. And when I was at Arkansas State, I actually was able to learn about a program that partnered with the Washington Center internship program, and also being a Pi Sigma Alpha Honor Society member. I was actually able to apply to this amazing scholarship where I was one of three students in the entire US
Wow.
that earned this phenomenal scholarship that got me to DC, and it was the first time that I actually flew on an airplane. I know.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and from there, I think I've been riding and flying anyways ever. And that just opened my world. It was my first experience, like, being in DC, of course, and not first, I take that back. I actually took a bus in 6th grade on a trip to DC. Needless to say, I had an opportunity to interview as a part of my portfolio, the former director of victim assistance for not victim assi sorry, the victim services division for the FBI at the time. And that interview that was supposed to be 30 minutes turned into over an hour. And it was such an incredible experience. I stayed in touch with the director at the time, and the bureau in the fall of me graduating, they were starting to really pick up more hiring on the intelligence part as a result of the post 9/11 intel failure, all those things. And that is how I actually came to be inside of the FBI. And I know I skipped through talking about the city, what we talked about earlier, but just people to know, I started in local government for a bit over a year after I graduated. My mom was actually going through breast cancer at the time, the first time, and she's a two-time breast cancer survivor, so she's good in, being able to have those roles at the time, and being her caregiver was also something that was equally important to me, and being able to then have this phenomenal career with the Bureau for more than a decade that took me from this girl from inner city Memphis to all parts of the world, even here in the Washington, D.C. metro, being able to go to Europe and be a representative for the US government, being able to go to other major continents and do some phenomenal work, and also be asked, "What do you assess? What do you think?" And I'm like, "Wait, me?" And being able to have not only a seat at the table, but a voice at the table, and knowing that a lot of the work that I have done has not only been briefed at the highest levels of government, but they have made significant impact, from real investigations to being able to throw out a lot of threats as well. And fast forward post 11 plus years, I then pivoted into tech. Part of it was I knew I wanted to pivot. Other part was being a mom to a medically complex needs child. And then COVID happened, and my daughter was not even 1 year post open heart surgery. So that really expedited my move, and my husband and I were like, okay, well, we both can't physically be going into anybody's office with having to make these real life decisions at the time. And I was able to pivot and go to Twitter. And I was the head of Site Policy Americas and focused on safety and cybercrime. there. So anything you can think of from hate speech, abusive behavior, violent organizations, terrorist groups, election safety, pick a thing, child sexual exploitation, and all these horrible things that you see. And then also being able to see this same tech be for good and working literally not only across the Americas, but also working across the globe and understanding that things that were happening in real time were immediately impacting me. Think about if you think back to 2020, the cybersecurity breach of Twitter, one of the biggest of its kind in the private sector, and in what attention it grabbed, especially with some of the accounts, and then having to actually be the person in the background as a leader, leading that work, hadn't even been at the company 2+ days, and really focusing on how to respond, working with the chief data privacy officer, and really thinking about how do we move forward and what guardrails and stop gaps are we going to put in place and this after action. And then moving forward, thinking about the elections, thinking about the other global conflicts, thinking about the Ukraine Russia conflict, and being instrumental working with our human rights team at the time to create a policy and launch it for prisoners of war as a result of the Ukraine and Russia conflict. And looking at the Geneva Convention, looking at the international human rights standards, and to be able to launch such a robust policy in such a short amount of time was really, some humbling and incredible experience to be a part of in real time. And to kind of wrap it up with your users going from Twitter to Amazon, I was recruited by Amazon and served as the global head for display and sponsor ad policies, focused on really looking at static images that users might see as part of ads, and then sponsor with things that are served to you. Also, specifically taking a full look at the child and children content featuring children and in dangerous activities like water, bodies of water, riding toys, all these things, and ensuring that the picture represented something that would be considered safe, not only by the international advertising standards, but also what we, the company, consider to be a good user experience and advertising experience as well. And being able to also be on the forefront of unlocking various revenue opportunities as it relates to real money gaming, as we see societal changes, as it relates to gambling and sports and all of those things. And really working with our product and engineering teams, both at Twitter and at Amazon, and ensuring that the policies that were created were actually being able to be enforced and implemented in a way that was actually doing what we set out these policies to do, using automation and also human experience to be able to do so. And so that's a little bit of my work. And currently, I am the founder and principal strategist and consultant for the End Strategy Group, which is my own consulting group. And it's really exciting because I get to work really at the cusp of really thinking a North Star of human centered policy framework development as it relates to AI and emerging technology, and also digital trust and safety. And whether that's working with Fortune 500 companies, whether that's working with smaller startups, and then also upskilling the workforce or reskilling the workforce. I do a lot of that work. And in the same token, from a cybersecurity standpoint, I also teach people how to be operationally secure. So a lot of OPSEC I teach about when I am providing free workshops on how to pivot successfully in this AI and emerging technology driven world. And that has really been that thing that you can see in real time that gives you immediate kind of outcome in many ways.
We're gonna dive into that last part in a little bit, but I wanna talk about the queen of pivot and how you kept up with the pace there. 'Cause, I mean, not only being an agent, but kind of evolving with the tech along the way and the policy and all of that. So, you mentioned during your educational phase, it was about being at the foot of curiosity and, like, that feeding you. How did you keep up with all of the changes in tech, in all of the variety of different roles that you had to take on? Because you went from policy work to child endangerment to advertising to security and leadership. So, how would someone following in your footstep kind of learn from the queen of pivot here?
Yeah. Excellent question. I know someone is like listening and following me, like, oh my God, how did you do all this? Like, it seems like a lot. And so for me, it goes back to what I say my North Star is, and that is human centered approaches, whether that is like being direct at a tactical level of keeping human first, or actually being strategic and thinking about policy, not only that is public policy at like the local, state, or federal levels, but also policies around the product innovation itself. So, like product policy and the thought process, to your point of like teasing out how does one come to be, it's actually not as segmented as you would think. As someone who is a former career intelligence analyst and leader, I got to know the policy to be able to actually successfully do intelligence. You can't just do whatever you want. And really, I mean, we go through very intensive training specifically on understanding the policies and having a paralegal background. Of course, I am trained in understanding not only local level policies, but at the federal level. And the cool thing about the federal level is that those policies are the same no matter what state you're in, right? And really understanding the Federal Register, big cases that have had these landmark precedent, and really bringing all those things together. So for any user, I just want to remind them that when you're in various organizations, specifically speaking to government, because government is a lot of times very bureaucratic, it means that you could also be doing like multiple jobs depending on how big your current office or department. And when I first started in my career, I was actually in a satellite offshoot. And therefore, I was like a jack of all trades, literally. And I was a master of none, but I kind of mastered a whole lot. And that really required me to get my hands dirty. That required me to actually be out in the field working alongside the special agents and really bringing this extra added value to things that they hadn't even thought about, right? And so, in order to do that, though, I still needed to understand the policies. When you think about wiretapping and all these national security laws, having to get things like national security letters, all of these things still require me to know the policy, like literally front and backwards. Because if you fall out of that, then there is a problem that will be a consequence not only to me as an employee, but it can also be a consequence to an investigation. And so they're not necessarily segmented at all. And I actually think that's what has positioned me to be such a visionary in how I see the world and these very complex problems, is because my career started out in very complex problems.
Well,
And
yeah. Like, for example, thinking of like a GRC analyst, you have to understand both the tech, the people, the process, and then all of the compliance
yeah,
and policy that goes along with it. And then you have to bring all the stakeholders together and try to marry it all into something that makes sense for an organization. And most people see that as an entry level role, and unfortunately, it does take a lot. It is possible to learn it along the way, but like you said, you're a jack of all trades in a say a GRC analyst role because you have to learn a little bit of everything in order
kind of
to go
understand the
on.
bigger picture.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're 1000% correct. And that's really where I sit now. And a lot of the work that I'm doing now is really focused on that integrity, policy, and compliance framework as well. And really thinking about not only best practices, but even how we audit or how a company audits. And is that audit actually getting to the actual root of what we want? And that's really sometimes requiring the companies or the organizations, like inside of various companies, there's a lot of orgs within them, right? And you want to make sure that the problem that you were set out to try to solve, when you have your hypothesis and what the ending is, and go back to those things and make sure that those things are married up. And when you talked about bringing stakeholders together, one of my superpowers, I would say, is actually being a bridge builder. I'm a super connector. I am a natural influencer. I really know how to get to the root of issues, even from people where they've been told that this person is difficult to work with. They're likely not going to change their mind. And being like, okay, just wait a minute, let me work on this, and being able to move the needle because I am truly a leader who believes in there is not everything can't be no. So how do we get to yes? Or even if it's a no, let's just say not yet. And when it
Or
is
maybe.
or maybe, right? When it's absolute no, then this is why. It is not enough because we are human, right? It is not enough to just keep telling someone no. There has to be really adjudication, justification as to why it's no. Otherwise, you can find yourself because also it's important to understand the political environment of a workspace as well, right? You want to be known for like, okay, yes, I'm in compliance, but you also want to be a person where you're seen as someone who wants to move the mission forward and not always the blocker. And that is a dance, if I'm being honest. And so for anyone that's out there, let's say you are young in your career and you're like, do I speak up now or do I hold it? I'm gonna tell you this. You could probably feel in my energy. I am not risk averse. I believe and I believe in rocking the boat when it matters. I don't rock the boat on everything, learned it, honestly very early because I do want to be part of the team, but I also believe that it's a disservice when we stay silent, knowing that your voice actually matters, but we can be afraid because it might be different from what everyone else on the team is thinking. And I've learned to live with it's okay to think differently and be differently, even if it's shot down. What you know is I took what I learned, what I know, and I brought it to the table and I'm able to document it. I'm able to say, this is why I assess things to be low, medium, or high. And this is why. And that's the only thing that I would say as a young professional is that sometimes you don't have the decision making skills, but you do still have a voice. And I say use it, but use it
So pivoting to another one of your points is kind of to the future. And you mentioned that now you're helping companies advise around AI and how to strategically use it. There, I've seen some contention in between companies that think it's a magical box that wants to
oh,
solve everything. And then on the other hand, they're really not prepared to let that genie out of the bottle because they don't have the controls in place. They don't understand their own processes for it. So how do you help someone up and coming to use AI consciously and not say be a tool of it, but use
I
it as a
love
tool?
that. Yeah. Nope. You're spot on. It's actually the thing I would honestly say that keeps me up at night, keeps me thinking. As you talked about, how do you continue to learn? As I said, I am always looking at most recent written materials from true reputable researchers and also like books, again, of reputable sources. And those things keep me on my toes. And also, as we think about, to your point, like you got this kind of like AI is gonna like fix all of my company problems. That is actually what scares me. And unfortunately, we are seeing a disproportionate amount of layoffs when companies are having these record profit margin earnings, right? But yet we are having now an oversaturated market of either unemployment or underemployment. And so I think that there is a dance and a middle ground of if I were these companies or CEOs or COOs, I would actually want to hold on to my employees before basically basically pulling the trigger and saying, "We're gonna lay these people off," because what you cannot replace is institutional knowledge. I don't care how much technology you have. You and I both know you can only put so much in the system. Some things you kinda gotta, again, sit at the feet of the expert and There are certain things even that experts may write in a book, but if you talk to them, it will actually probably never make the book, right? And that's just how humans are. And I worry that you have a lot of CEOs and many, I would say, and this is me not trying to be very gender specific, but the reality is a lot of the CEOs are men. And I think that in some ways there is some groupthink, echo chambering of yeah, it's gonna fix these things and we're gonna make a lot of money versus taking the opposite approach of okay, there's a balance. Okay, we're doing good. We're healthy from a financial standpoint. Let us, since we are financially healthy, let us hold on to our employees. Maybe we help reskill them and use them elsewhere because people literally do not come to companies or leave them for not enough money, or most of the time, those are not the reasons, it's the leadership. And when you're having this record number of layoffs, people remember, right? And the whole idea of loyalty is getting lost and the humanity is being lost. And that actually worries me as these companies continue to deploy. Because my question is who's overseeing the AI? Who is training and auditing and retraining the AI? Please don't tell me AI is doing itself. And the people that you have, are they actual the right people? And because you wanna go leaner, is leaner actually better for the company at this point in time? Or do we need to be doing testing and incubation periods to make sure that this is actually the way forward? Because what I foresee is there's gonna be a company that has let people go way too soon, and there's gonna be some type of catastrophe with AI that's gonna go real bad, and I am literally a glass half full person, but I'm also a realist, and I can see there being a PR nightmare, a brand safety nightmare, and a people nightmare because let's be clear, when it comes to technology, usually, as I said in the very beginning, the people who are most likely to be harmed, that these things weaponized against, are generally underrepresented communities, communities that do not even have a say, don't even have sometimes the literacy to understand what is
Mhm.
happening. And rightfully so, they can be skeptical because of some of the historical context around technology. And so I need people, instead of thinking about money, yeah, we're a capitalistic country, but again, I think there's a balance. You can have profit and you can have purpose. So
And I think going back to one of the things you mentioned in regards to auditing it, can you even audit it fast enough before a new version comes out and you have to re-audit it? And can you even validate the bias in the training data at scale for the market that it was trained to
service.
do, if it was trained to do external think. And I think that's the problem is like most don't go into it with the right set of training data. They use generalized models
Very
and then
Eurocentric too, right? Like it's just stale. Nope. And we keep hearing we want to mitigate bias. I'm like, it ain't that hard. You got a whole bunch of money. If you just kind of go meet the people where they are, you could actually compensate them for some good data. That
yeah.
to me
There's a another podcast called Fake, and in one of the recent episodes, they talked about a European AI study that used more European language data in the training of the AI, and it changed the responses of the AI because now it has more regional knowledge
now
than
those
just say
cultural nuances.
yeah.
Nope. That's all I'm saying. Like it has to be about the globe. If we're saying we want these models, we're creating them with these different companies. And if your company specifically serves various like continents and regions, then you have to like do the work and not be lazy about it. And and really think through what the strategy is instead of trying to be the fastest and the first. And you ultimately do harm because you're trying to be the fastest and the first instead of actually doing the due diligence and doing right by users. Because if you bring your users along for the journey and be transparent about what you are actually doing and the things you are doing to protect not only the user data, but the user experience, if and when, because in cyber security and cyber warfare, all these things and cyber attacks, they happen at just where we are in the world. So if and when those things happen, because you brought your people along for the journey, you put certain things in place like guardrails, then you're actually able then to go to your consumers and be honest about what has transpired. But this is what we are immediately doing to mitigate some of these issues. And yeah, while you may lose some trust with some, you're continuing to walk them through your journey. And when you're able to do that, people trust that more than you said kind of what you were doing, but it really only comes out later what you were really doing, and it was never about the people. You don't want that. And that is that kind of fine line that I think that people who have this power and this technology, they miss because they're thinking about the money. When money is important, we need to live, but some of the money that you actually are making, you will never be able to spend in this entire lifetime. So why not do something for good and do it right? And do it right by ensuring that you have this multifaceted level of voices throughout the world that's helping to train your data.
You mentioned something earlier. You hope that the AI isn't the one training or correcting itself, but I feel that's almost where we're at
Oh, yeah.
because you have vibe coding companies that are making their applications from LLM model that are essentially AI trained, deploying AI applications that are being deployed to masses and what level of QA is going into that, but it's speed to market. But at what point do we consider safety and resilience as part of that? I know in health and government, we hold them really accountable for that safety and resilience, but we don't in the consumer market. Um, do we see that pivoting anytime soon?
I have a deep sigh because I don't know in a sense of like, because what we are currently seeing, like you said, is the quickness to deploy and also the quickness to streamline and go lean, right? Versus taking our time. So that kind of safety, the resilience piece of it. If we're continuing to go based on what we are currently seeing, no, I don't think that we're going to have the level of resilience that I think the companies are in their minds banking on. They feel like they built these certain processes. We have responsible say AI. We have these safety frameworks. We have all these things, but I'm like, but again, where are the people? And I'm not saying you need the same amount of people that you previously had, but when you're shedding thousands of people in one time, then I would be sounding the alarm if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
So that's really what I think, that no, the resilience part, I don't think sustains itself based on how we're moving. There are so many people who are optimistic saying AI is going to do this, AI is going to do that, AI is going to do that. But let's be clear, and this is no knock to this company at all. That's just not my goal because I do believe that AI has leveled the playing field from accessibility, people that learn differently, all those things. But when ChatGPT Model 5 rolled out, that was a perfect example of how crazy it was. Like, it was literally making up stuff, and I was like, "Is this real?" When it was like, it I kept asking it to do the same thing, and I'm like, "What's happening?" And that is a perfect example of it was supposed to be this great thing. It was going to roll out. It was going to be so smooth, and it went so bad. And
Well, in tech, we call it hallucination.
I know it's I know it's colleges,
In human life, we call it BS.
but that's it. That's what I was. Yeah, I was like
But
hallucinating.
we've gone way
Yes, we
past our
have.
half hour. It's been an interesting conversation, Erica. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your life journey. Appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And we'll be sharing this episode shortly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to your audience too.